Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Ali Haji on. Hello, Ali. How are you?
Doing very well, Michael. Pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you here. You do some amazing work with Ion Energy. So why don't you share a little bit about you and the organization, then we'll dive right into the conversation.
Absolutely. My background stems from asset management. I've been the co-founder and chief executive of Ion Energy, which trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange on the venture market, the OTC QB market in the US, and over in Frankfurt under ticker 5YB. I've been the chief executive since co-founding the company in 2017. Our purpose is to explore and de-risk various lithium assets in Mongolia. We sort of foresaw the clean green energy revolution, and having sort of taken the company public since August of 2020, we've since been able to explore via drilling our Babayul license, which is an 81,000 hectare license about 20 kilometers from the Chinese border. Obviously being relevant because China is the largest consumer of lithium on the planet today. We continue to explore our assets. We continue to build a world-class team. And the intent is to ultimately bring on a strategic that allows us to take these assets to the next level and upend that supply chain in the Asian subcontinent.
Well, lithium demand is just skyrocketing with, the green energy movement, as you saw, and even going public in 2020 in the midst of a pandemic. How brave of you! But you know what? It's we've heard fortune favors the brave, basically, and the work that you're doing obviously is pretty much pandemic proof in a way because. The need for it and finding and exploring is so critical. And even though we think we've, it's like we're running out of resources, it's like, no, we haven't even begun to scratch the surface in the places that you find, like, Mongolia, for example. That's not a country that's top of mind for people going, okay, where would we find there? A lot of people wouldn't necessarily know what kind of resources they have there. So, how did you come across, researching there and the work that you're doing?
Of course, I was, as I mentioned, I was in asset management for about 13 years, and my roles spanned from Toronto to Hong Kong and London as well, where I worked on various different initiatives, including mergers and acquisitions. I actually grew up in East Africa until I was 18. I was living in Nairobi, Kenya. My father has been in mining since 1998 in Zambia, so you could say that it ran in my blood. When I left Invesco around 5 years ago, I came back to Toronto seeking employment at some of the other majors and was looking to move to Chicago, actually, to work for one of the world's largest aluminum manufacturing facilities. And a dear friend of mine and now business partner tapped on my shoulders and said, I'm in the midst of taking a company public. That company is Step Gold. It's a Mongolian gold clay that could potentially become a producer. And I value your skill set. I'd very much like you to come on as an advisor and help us through the process as an external outside consultant. Having been brought on and having gone to Mongolia, I recognized that there was a vast array of minerals available in that country. It's 1.5 million square kilometers, but only 3% of the company or the country had been explored. I thought to myself, there might be an opportunity here for lithium, and I know that lithium will sort of make a cyclical comeback, as do most elements. And so we went down to the Ministry of Mining archives, and we found that in the 50s, the Russian government, when Mongolia was part of the USSR, did some drilling very close to the Chinese border, and they were able to extract lithium brines. They had that assay, they had that sample, and that in itself was exciting to me because it was in the Gobi Desert. That climate very much mirrors what you'll find in the Atacama, which is where you have the vast majority of the world's lithium brine resources today. And so on the back of that review of that data, we went back to the government of Mongolia and asked them to put up these licenses for tender. We were awarded them in 2019. And then, as you rightly pointed out, in 2020, during the midst of the pandemic, we were able to take the company public so we could actually start doing work on the ground. So that's sort of the background as to how we got into Mongolia.
It's an amazing backstory that has obviously a deep history in that back in, the USSR days and all of that. And that's what's so intriguing in the fact that you recognized, wait a minute, this land, for lack of a better term, mimics where majority of the lithium that's been mined or is currently being mined. It's like that's almost identical, which means, wait a minute, we may be able to do the same thing here. So being forward thinking, and it's great that you've got a partner in the government that's willing to do this, because I know, and I'm sure this is nothing new to you. I hear stories time and time again where somebody knows, like, there's resources, whatever it is, lithium, gold, whatever. And they're like, wait, but they're in this land, but the government is very restrictive. They don't want to cooperate. They're like, no, we don't want to do anything with it. Even though, or they're thinking, well, we're going to do it for ourselves, but they don't have the technology and the wherewithal to be able to do it. So it's great that they are partnering with you in order for this work to be done.
That's precisely right. Mongolia as a nation, 20% of their GDP comes from mining. 80 to 90% of their exports are from mining as well. So mining is a very important part of their economy. And as a result of a very rapidly growing skill set in country, there was still a gap that needed to be filled. And that's why the government of Mongolia is so inviting to foreign companies to bring in their expertise, their leadership, to help ultimately develop the economy. So they've been a fantastic partner, and we're very glad to be working with them.
And being aware of other investments and taxation and all of that stuff, how is Mongolia to work with from a taxation type of situation?
They are fairly, I'd say, fairly light on the tax side because they obviously value the fact that we're bringing out those minerals, if you will, or we're exporting those minerals and adding to the GDP. One of the programs that's worth anybody that might be curious, if they'd like to look into it, it's called the Gold 2 program, whereby if you're developing or extracting gold from Mongolia, you can sell it to the central bank at minimal tax rates and you get paid in less than 24 hours. So they are very friendly as a jurisdiction as far as ensuring that taxation is low and that you're able to actually execute on your promises to not only yourselves, the government, but ultimately your shareholders as well.
I think that's what's so enticing for many investors and people that are looking to relocate, not just from a work standpoint, but from a way of life, is the taxation situation. And we see it in a lot of countries. Obviously, in the United States, it's a huge issue. Canada as well. It seems like that there's just more and more taxes on things, where there's countries that recognize, hey, we can cover our expenses by what we do in creating an environment to allow businesses to be able to use our resources, mine it, create exports. So we're getting enough revenue where we don't have to start charging exorbitant taxes. And we will see as time goes on, the countries that do that are going to be the ones that are going to thrive, and the ones that want to tax people and organizations to the nth degree, they're going to see mass exodus of things. And it's going to be an interesting thing to watch as we continue to evolve and grow, and more green energy, more innovation, more things that are coming about from mining, not just, from lithium, but other things as well. It could be cryptocurrency or whatever the case may be. We're seeing that those nations that are more open and saying, we're going to get our share of this, but we don't need to make it so cumbersome that it's impossible to do any work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think we talk about taxes and how they're going up as far as building a good jurisdiction to do business in, and we look at what's happening in Canada and the US and a lot of the developed world. The economies have had to sort of inject a big amount of capital to keep the economies afloat as a result of the pandemic. And the other side of that is that they're incentivizing the clean green energy revolution through that expenditure. So they're subsidizing the cost for electric vehicles by printing vast sums of money, allowing the adoption rates of these electric vehicles to go up, the demand for lithium to go up. But on the flip side, in due course, inflation will catch up to that. And ultimately, you will have taxes increased in these countries. So the pandemic, I think, has taught us a number of things. One, that the government does have swaying power, or enough spending power to sway the decisions of the regular consumer. And I think it's about time that we made these changes, because obviously the environment is suffering. But it is one that I think we have to be wary of future generations and how they may be impacted by what's going on in the world here today.
Yeah, every step has a ripple effect, whether it's deficits or the high inflation, or I think, quite frankly, most importantly, is the environmental impact that we are creating, and we see it with weather patterns and tsunamis and volcanoes exploding in the ocean, and the ripple effect of that in the Pacific Ocean. A few weeks back was alarming, to say the least, and we know that what we're doing and how we're living is creating a lot of challenges. So the green energy, the lithium, and moving away from what we've been doing so we operate in a cleaner state is going to, one, save our planet. Number two, create a lot of opportunities for innovation and other things that we can use this, these types of commodities and metals and everything else for to, again, make our life a better place across the board.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And one would argue, and I know you've written a book, Michael, Burnout Proof. So I know the topics behind it, and I think it's very relevant given the pandemic and being a business leader as well. One might say that the world is burning out with what we've been doing to it, with the explosions and the tsunamis and what have you. So I think it's really just, let's learn from what we've done. Let's ensure that we're putting our best foot forward. Let's ensure that we're building teams that understand that culture and are able to truly make a change as far as the way we continue our path in the future.
So where do you see your organization, Ian, in the next, I'd say, 2 to 5 years? I'm not asking for the 5-year plan.
No, of course.
If 5 years ago, I don't think any of us would have said, "Oh yeah, we'll be in entering the third year of a pandemic." They'll be like, "A third year of a what?" Yeah. So I don't think anybody had this on their business plan, other than Wimbledon, as far as their insurance policy. That I always found that kind of intriguing, that they had a pandemic insurance policy on the book. So when they had to cancel Wimbledon in 2020, the insurance company paid them, I think, $30 million or something ridiculous, because they had an insurance policy on that for years. And, they were able to withstand some of the losses of not having the tournament. So I'm just curious to see where you see things going in the next couple of years.
That's incredible story. I will have to look that up. I think that's genius. But where we see ION in the coming years, we're looking to forge strategic relationships. I think it's important that we do so as we continue to understand our assets. We raised a bit of money last year that allowed us to kick off a more extensive exploration program. It allowed us to cover the vast majority of an asset that is almost 5 times the size of Vancouver. Gave us a good understanding of where the hotspots are, and now the next stage in our operation over the course of this year would be to add some experts in their field, allow us to expand our exploration programs in the country, whereby we're using very specific techniques to understand the quality of the lithium as well as how much of it there is in the ground. And then we'll bring on a strategic partner to help us better understand the development of those assets and how you would potentially extract that lithium. The intent is over the next 2 to 5 years to bring in a strategic investor or two that hold either a board seat, a good chunk of the company, and would ultimately work with us to define an exit for us and our shareholders, whereby they would take on the assets and bring them to production, allowing us to move on to the next project in our life cycle.
It's important to have good strategic partners, whether it's to bring on skills that your organization doesn't necessarily have or want to do. There's, a lot of times in organizations, like in your situation with your background, there's a lot of things that you could do, but does it make sense for you to do all of those things? It's like, no, let's outsource, if we can use that phrase, or let's partner up with other organizations that thrive and do really well in that aspect of things that can help us either get into new markets or to strengthen what we're doing in our own organization, or just access
exactly
to
right.
things that we want. Yeah, and I think
exactly right.
I think a lot of entrepreneurs, they think, well, I'm the one that has to do it all. It's like, no, you're not. It's like your growth is limited by you.
Exactly right.
You're going to hit a plateau if you don't expand out and partner up with like-minded organizations or in arenas that you need to get into.
We're essentially, if you look at us from a millennial point of view, we're essentially a startup, but we're in the mining space, a space that's generally led by older Caucasian men. But here we are starting a mining project, which is essentially a startup from the ground up. We're looking to grow this into something that would upend the supply chain in that region. But we absolutely recognize the limitations of our abilities. And that's why we would need to partner with a strategic that has, a multi-billion or $100 billion plus market cap and the intellectual capital necessary to bring assets such as these to production. So we absolutely recognize that gap. We've never gone out to market saying that this is something that we're going to bring to production. It's not something we've done. It's not something we would know how to do. But bringing in those strategic partners, as well as hiring the right people, would allow us or bring us closer to the path of getting there. So we do recognize our limitations.
Yes, and to pick on Tesla for a moment, there's going to be other organizations that are going to be using, lithium, and not just obviously cars, but all kinds of other devices as well. So there's a ton of opportunity out there. So finding those avenues and working with organizations that serve those organizations, it just creates, rapid growth. And I look at it, it's like, I know you've been busy. You're going to get much busier. It's just, we know the writing's on the wall. There's government mandates for it. The U.S. is, pushing, with President Biden's drive for things. It's like we're trying to get away, again, going back to making Mother Earth healthier. And we need to utilize the technology available and the mining capabilities and everything else to improve our world. And the work that you're doing is doing just that.
Yes, and I appreciate that, Michael, for you to have that vision. Mining sometimes is touted as a dirty word, one that's doing more damage to the environment than good. Unfortunately, for everything that the world requires today, mining is inescapable. Oil and gas is not going to go away anytime soon, simply because of the amount of plastic that we use, let alone, the vehicles of the aviation industry and everything else. But the amount of plastic that we use requires oil. That's where plastic comes from. So oil is not going to go anywhere. The lithium mining side is very important. And I think that's going to continue to provide what's necessary to go to this greener future. But you can do things sustainably. You can leave the environment in the best possible state than after you have extracted those minerals. And I think that's important to take note of, that everything we do and everything we plan to do would have a big ESG mandate attached to it, whereby you leave that land just as well as you found it, or better, in some cases. And if you look at, Tesla is a household name that resonates very well with this side of the world, and now in Asia as well, with gigafactories being built across China. The Gigafactory 1 in China put out a Tesla Model 3 in 364 days, shy of a year. They broke ground and they put out that first vehicle on the supply line within 364 days. They're now building 4 other gigafactories in that region. But it's important to note that China, always being viewed as this massive polluter, is also moving towards this clean, green energy revolution. They currently sell more EVs per capita than anywhere else in the world. The producers, the local Chinese producers, NIO included, sell more vehicles than Tesla does around the world. Yet China today is importing the vast majority of their lithium from Australia or from Latin America. What better way to cut the environmental footprint than to provide lithium from 20 kilometers across the border? And that's what ION intends to do, is check off the ESG mandates by not only empowering this clean green energy revolution, but reduce the overhead and the carbon footprint necessary to bring in the lithium to the economy that requires it most.
Yeah, it's great to hear that China is moving towards that, just because the mere size of their population and their country, and having them move, to a greener way of living is going to have a positive ripple effect all across the globe, and it provides inspiration, for other countries. And I know a lot of countries are doing it. They're taking stock in things and reducing single-use plastics, like in Canada, for example, which I'm sure you're familiar with. They're a move to eliminate the single-use plastics at restaurants and things like that. So I remember ordering food the other day, and they had bamboo forks and cutlery, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, it surprised me at first, but then I go, oh, okay, well, there you go. And of course, the straws and all that other things. It's those little things. And I'm like, well, what's the big deal? It's like, yeah, but when 33 million people are consuming this stuff on a daily basis, it's just in Canada, 37 million in Canada now. You start, and then in the United States, well over 300 million. Using single-use plastics all the time, we start cutting back that. All of a sudden, we start seeing a little bit healthier lifestyle, and it makes the earth cleaner. It keeps our waters clean, and all the things that we're doing. All of these steps they may seem small, but they're huge as far as the ramifications are concerned. So it's great that you're one of these advocates out there that's doing something to help make Earth better, and obviously improve the way that we do things across the globe.
Indeed. I think, ultimately you want to get your hands into something that is making an impact, but we are in the business of making money for others, as you have to be if you're a public company. And I think, and ourselves, we're big shareholders in our company. We've participated in every sort of financing of every round of our organization. We control about 25% of all shares outstanding, yet we're fully escrowed. And that's by design. I think we believe in what we do enough, as do the investors that we've continually brought on. And we see this as an opportunity to truly provide for that clean green energy revolution, all the while making our investors some money alongside with us as we progress through the journey.
It's a great way to do it, because when the people that are working in the organization are invested in the organization, that shows that you believe in what you're doing, and that demonstrates value to the investors around the globe. So love this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and this awesome work you're doing at ION?
You can visit our website at www.ionenergy.ca. We're also on the vast majority of the social media platforms. LinkedIn's a great way to get in touch with us as well. Alternatively, feel free to contact me directly. My contact details are on our website, and I'm one of those rare individuals that responds to every email and every phone call.
Well, I appreciate you in doing that. And also, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really loved our conversation today, and continued success.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Michael.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.